Did you just come out of a coma? This is how out of the present moment people are. Holding up cameras. Dude, no, this is for you to experience.
In the world of late night television, you would expect there to be certain rules that everyone has to follow, from the audience members to the guests themselves. But for the Jimmy Fallon show, you might be surprised at how many insane rules there are to follow.
Did you want to win any of these items on the screen? If so, be sure to watch the whole video, leave a like, and comment the hidden message.
Potty break? Nope. There's an old saying that has been passed down through the generations, and it's simply, when you gotta go, you gotta go. And that's true, except, yep, you guessed it, when you're at the Jimmy Fallon show. To be clear, it's not like they force you to stay in the room. They legally can't, but they can make sure that if you leave the studio once filming starts, that you can't come back in.
I so didn't want to come back.
It's a terrible rule they go by, but it's with the best intentions because they're running a very big business. Practically, one of the biggest businesses at being television broadcast. And also, to be clear, they have plenty of time to go to the bathroom before the show starts. So if you didn't make going to the bathroom a priority, then you should probably start making it a priority now. The audience even has their own green room called the Peacock Lounge, where they can relieve themselves before showtime. And the crew makes sure to let you know what's going on in regards to the you can't return policy. So it's not as though they're trapping you in the room, but do make sure you go to the bathroom before the show so you don't embarrass yourself. Prepare to be there a while. It's important to remember that late shows are played late, but they don't technically tape late. Actually, they tape rather early in the evening so that people can get home safely without having to go through New York late at night, which anyone who lives there will tell you is not always a safe time to be walking around. If late shows actually taped midnight to early morning, the shows wouldn't be as successful as they are now.
Seriously, I'm so glad all of you could wake up at 3 p.m. to be with us tonight. That's so thoughtful.
Since these late shows do not stay any later than they're pretending to be, they record their shows at an earlier, more reasonable time. Not only is this time factor better for the show host, show crew, and its guests, but it helps the audience too. As the audience, anyone is allowed onto the show setup. The catch though is that you need to be prepared for being there a long time. And we're not just talking about being there waiting to get in. From the moment you get in line to the time the Tonight Show ends, it can take about 3 hours in total. It might not seem like it takes that long when you're watching the episode, but remember, it's taped and edited for viewing pleasure. Not to mention, audience members have to go through a lot just to get in the studio doors, so it's not as easy as television makes you believe. That's another reason that they tell you to go to the bathroom before you go into the studio, because it may be a while before you get out. Want tickets? Good luck. Not all of Jimmy Fallon's guests are the ones he talks to next to his desk. His audience members are also very much his guests. There are rules and expectations that they have to follow as well. But what surprises you is that just getting to be an audience member is a bit of a challenge. You'd think that like a sporting event that you would just go and look up the dates that you think you can attend and then buy some tickets, right? Wrong. You actually have to go to the official website for the show, make a profile, and then enter what's basically a raffle to see if you can get tickets. What's more, you only get 4 tickets per person. Once the raffle is done, it's a free-for-all for the rest of the tickets. This isn't a bad thing per se, and it honestly does help keep things a little fair in terms of who can get tickets or not. But for those who really want to go see the Jimmy Fallon show, it makes it a really big challenge to get seats. But on the flip side, you no doubt feel really rewarded if you win and are able to buy some. And of course, you'll try harder to get the next date if you want to go, if you miss out on the current one, right? Forced to clap.
Okay. Cool. No, my bad.
The audience gets a lot of rules because it's honestly a big part of the show. If the audience isn't into it, then a lot of the segments will fall flat. So they're expected to do things even if they don't want to. The biggest of these rules is about clapping. Before they're brought into the show, the audience members are put into a waiting room where several rules are regaled to them, from basic ones to ones about clapping. The biggest clapping rule is, when prompted, you better clap. If you think about it, that's where there's almost always clapping when jokes are done, or someone is trying to get a rise out of the crowd or whatever. It's not that the audience thinks it's funny, but rather they're told to clap, and thus they clap. And if you're curious, yes, they are indeed applause signs scattered around the set so that they know exactly when to clap. From someone telling you when to clap to someone telling you when to gasp and put on fake emotions for the show's ethos purposes. The biggest clapping rule is, when prompted, you better clap. This goes for a lot of shows on television, from The Tonight Show to Family Feud. If a crew member prompts you to laugh after a very obvious, unfunny joke, you have to put on your biggest, fakest laugh because it's what sells to the viewers at home that the host is actually just that funny. It's not that the audience thinks it's funny, but rather they're told to clap and thus they clap. Without the audience being told what to do or when to do it, most shows wouldn't be as high energized or as popular as they are now. It brings a big help to the show and hosts as a whole because it shifts the entirety of the show's mood to whatever they want it to be or whatever they think is most pleasing to the ones watching. Dress code.
Hey guys, Welcome to a dressing room.
This one technically applies to both the audience and guests of Jimmy Fallon. Obviously, Jimmy wouldn't want his guests to be wearing revealing or risque clothes. It's true they're in the late night time slot and thus have more leeway than some daytime talk shows, but even they have limits. So while celebrities can be a little more showy, if you will, they do have limits to how far they can push things. As for the audience, they're strictly stated to dress smart casual. What the heck is that? Well, it's basically a step down from business casual, but also meant to be respectful. In essence, you need to wear clothes that cover you, are somewhat tight-fitting, obviously have no hateful or potentially controversial markings on them, and won't stand out too much in a crowd if the camera spots you. Trust me when I say, if the camera turns to you and you're wearing something controversial or inappropriate, the show will get the hate for it, since they are the ones who let you in and sit in the audience. These shows really don't have the time, energy, or effort for any of that. They'd rather steer clear of anything that'll make them look bad or put a bad taste in people's mouths about the show and how things are being ran, and being careful of how their audience dresses is one of the things they can control to avoid ending up on a messy Monday. Obviously, suits and certain proper dresses are fine for audience members, but the rule to abide by is don't be too casual, because if you show up in that, you will be denied entry to the show. No phones.
Neither of us know what any of these will say. We're told to bring our phone.
Have you ever been on Twitter and you see a friend of yours go, "Oh my god, I'm on the Jimmy Fallon show tonight"? If you did, you can bet that this tweet was made before being in the studio itself, because there are no phones allowed once you're in the studio, which means no live tweeting, no hashtagging, or texting or phone calls right before the show starts, nothing. The crew is adamant on this policy and will never make an exception or cut you some slack. These shows can't afford the time when someone's phone goes off and becomes a rather big distraction to the production. They are very careful with how they run things and what they can control to avoid anything that will throw off the entire show. So having a phone is a privilege, but so is being on the show. It's seen as polite and the right thing to do when coming onto game shows, talk shows, or late night TV shows. To be clear, you can have your phone on you via a pocket or a purse, but if you pull it out for any reason, you will find yourself being escorted out and your phone will be confiscated. You may not find it as a big deal having your phone on and texting during the show, but the show finds it rather rude and offensive if they see it. Others think they're slick and can sneak a picture, but the production crew of most late night shows are not small and are watching everything and everyone to ensure that nothing interrupts the show's progress to a perfect recording of tonight's episode. So for the sake of everyone involved, you're best just keeping your phone shut off and in your pocket. To be clear, you can have your phone on you via a pocket or purse, but if you pull it out for any reason, you will find yourself being escorted out and your phone will be confiscated. And obviously you would need to have your phone on silent before you go into the studio, because no one wants to hear your ringtone while a segment is going on, because that would be embarrassing for everyone involved. No picture policy. In the digital age that we live in right now, the idea of not being able to take out our phones to do something as basic as take a photo sounds, well, wrong. Just wrong. Especially when someone you admire is right in front of you and you want to take a picture to cement that moment, right? Well, that's fine if you're anywhere other than the Jimmy Fallon show, because the studio has definitive and strictly enforced no picture policy. So much so that if you are caught trying to take a picture on your phone, they will go to you, grab your phone, delete the picture completely off your phone, yes, that includes the deleted items folder, and then tell you to leave the studio. This may sound harsh, but think of it from their perspective. They're not just trying to protect Jimmy, but as well as the guests participating in the show. If the photo taker is careful enough in their shot, they can get an embarrassing picture and use it against the celebs, and no one wants that, especially them. So thus, no photos allowed. Think that's the harshest rule against the studio audience? Not even close. You will get embarrassed. I know this may seem like something to expect from a guy who is a comedian, but it's also true that many late night talk show hosts like Fallon, Kimmel, Conan, and more sometimes just like to talk to people about their recent adventures, exploits, and more. Yet for Fallon, one of the things that he likes to make sure his guests are aware of is that he will more times than not try and get his guests in either compromising positions via skits and such, or try and get them to reveal very personal details about themselves, or even get them to reveal things that they have never talked about before on a show. A classic example of this came from an unexpected place in Nicole Kidman. The legendary actress had actually known Fallon a long time before he was a talk show host, and she revealed to them that he unknowingly was on a date with her.
We once went on a date together, and I had no idea that was true. I didn't realize that. But you know.
Yeah, he was surprised to hear that too. Apparently a mutual friend of theirs hooked them up, but he didn't tell Jimmy that it was a date setting, so he kept things very casual. All the while, Kidman very much liked Fallon and tried to hint that this was a more serious meeting, but he didn't get the clues, and thus the date ended with two very different perceptions of what went on. As Kidman revealed this to him, it was not just Kidman who was embarrassed, but Jimmy too, who couldn't believe he was on a date with Kidman once upon a time, but didn't realize it. He was so embarrassed that he hid under the desk at one point. Obviously, it did work out for the best, as both of them are happily married, but the moment itself itself was priceless, and it wouldn't have happened if Fallon didn't push the envelope at times with his guests. Some questions you won't like. Not all questions are meant to be funny, and to be fair, sometimes the late night show hosts have to get the more personal or even political matters that are at hand, so all guests are warned ahead of time that there's a chance Jimmy will ask a question they won't like. We could easily bring up the Donald Trump interview that he did during his election campaign, but instead we'll go to one where Jimmy was trying to be funny, but it came off wrong. In 2017, Louis C.K. came into the show and he admitted to Jimmy that he liked taking naps, to which Jimmy asked, "Do you like it better than sleep?" Which is a really odd question to ask when you think about it, and clearly C.K. wasn't ready for that or expecting that at all. He admonished Fallon for asking that question and pretty much begged to move on, and I can't blame him for that. I mean, what was Fallon expecting to get an answer to that? You think you know? Lip sync battle isn't handpicked. Jimmy Fallon honestly has done a lot of great things for the entertainment industry, but one of the biggest things he's done by far is lip sync battle, where him and a celebrity guest will go head to head in a battle to see who can sing a classic song better, complete with choreography. This became so popular that it got its own series hosted by LL Cool J, with Jimmy being behind the scenes and even being one of the first guests to perform on the show. But on Jimmy Fallon's talk show, all of these lip sync battles aren't actually handpicked.
Each of us try and do lip sync better than the other. We don't know which songs the other person picked.
As a pre-recorded show, they do have time to practice and get things right for when the show airs. It's not a shocking reveal to most people, but for some, it was a little heartbreaking to know that not even a little lip sync battle seemed to be something that was real, and is arguably one of the most fun shows on TV today. Jimmy still does his own version with a twist. Unlike the spin-off show, Jimmy and his guests don't know what songs they're doing ahead of time, and thus they have to think on their feet and perform what comes naturally to them. This has led to many funny and viral moments and has helped differentiate it from the spin-off show that Jimmy created. 6-month ban. No, this isn't for the guests on the show, though you could probably get by with that because there are so many people that you want to talk to, more than likely. But rather, this is for the audience members. You see, Jimmy Fallon's show is one of the most popular late night shows on the air right now, and the studio that hosts him only has a limited number of seats, and every single one sells out. So to be fair to the audience in the studio and the ones who wish they were in the studio, if you're able to get to the show live, you have a 6-month ban placed on you. Yes, you can only go to, if you're lucky, 2 shows a year. I know this may sound unfair, but remember, there are not a lot of seats. They don't technically do the show year round, and lots of people want to see it. So it makes sense to put a little padding so that other people can see the show and not the same crowd every night. Being the butt of the joke. There's a lot of give and take when it comes to late night interviews. Yeah, some are serious, but a lot of the time, the hosts are there to try and make fun of you when you give them enough leeway. Thus, if you go onto the show, you better have a thick skin, especially since Jimmy can do very basic jokes to ones that might be seen as cruel. And because of the clapper rule, you'll find yourself holding your tongue while the audience cheers for the joke that was just made against you.
I sort of.
Do they allow dogs at the hotel?
Aren't you supposed to let people talk on the show?
The same expectations are held onto you when you go to a comedian show. They base their whole appearance off humor, some being crude and some being relatable. The comic was to point out a specific random person in the crowd that is sticking out the most and have a tendency to make fun of them for whatever reason because they believe their audience will find it funny, and usually the audience does. So do not be taken back when a show hosts have those tendencies broadcasted, because it's something that most of them do for the sake of the viewers and the laughs. There are numerous interviews where things got a bit awkward because Jimmy made a joke at the guest's expense, and they clearly wanted to say something not PG rated and yet didn't. Like I said, thick skin. Don't ask about secret guests. There's a lot of work and effort that goes into episodes of the Jimmy Fallon show, not the least of which is making sure the guests are taken care of and are treated right, for the most part in regards to the jokes and such. To do this, at times the interviews with guests are pre-taped, which is why you'll sometimes never see the audience interact with them in regards to crowd pans. But when that happens, that means that you are going to have a secret guest on the night you're on. But who will it be? You're going to have to wait and find out, because the crew will never tell you, and it's considered rude to ask. And while it's true that we live in a culture that very much loves to spoil things, why would you want the secret spoiled ahead of time? Where's your sense of adventure? Be early or don't come. Another old saying that is out there in the world is, to be early is to be on time, and to be on time is to be late. That might sound like something a parent would tell a child, but for those going to Jimmy Fallon, it's a promise and a deadline. You see, since so much goes into making a show like The Tonight Show, that they expect/need the audience to show up early so that they can make sure everything goes smoothly. The show takes place late at night, but the time to be there is at 3:45 at the latest, and it's actually expected that you show up about 30 minutes earlier than that just to be safe. But on the flip side of that, don't just come hours early and wait around. The staff will actually ask you to leave. Entire party must be present at check-in. Go with me on this, okay? Let's say that you and your family are going to the Tonight Show. Your family being you, your 2 parents, and your siblings, okay? You purchase 4 tickets and you go to the show, but your sibling, who lives in town, is working late that day and won't be there until 4:15. routine. They can just bring their ticket and get into the show because they have a ticket, right? I mean, you bought it for them, so your entire party should be allowed to get in, right? Wrong. It's strictly stated in their rules and regulations that if tickets are bought for a party, the entire party must be present to have all members let in. One can bring up the rear. Because of this, if you go to the show and your sibling isn't present, their ticket is forfeit and it'll go to another person. The shows are intentionally overbooked to ensure that someone isn't missing, and thus there's not a single empty seat in the house when they do an audience pan. Q&As. At the end of the show, Jimmy likes to have fun with the audience, who have been so patient and kind and have been following the rules. And to that end, anyone who attends the show should expect a Q&A with the host. The audience themselves get to have a lot of fun with Jimmy this way, and there have been some fun and emotional moments as a result of this. You can bet that the guests themselves wish they had the ability to do this with Jimmy in their interviews, but alas, they do not most of the time. What do you think of these rules that people attending or guesting on the Jimmy Fallon show have to follow? Do you think any of these are too strict? Do you think that some of these rules should be amended for convenience sake? Have you ever attended the Jimmy Fallon show? Let me know in the comments down below. Be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you next time on the channel.